Cloudtts. Walking in the Footsteps of the Buddha. Author Thich Nhat Hanh. Book 1. Chapter 20. The Deer. Every day the Buddha bathed in the Naranja river. He did walking meditation along the river banks and along the small forest paths his own steps had created. He sat in meditation on the shore beside the flowing river or beneath the Bodhi tree while hundreds of birds chirped among its branches. He had realized his vow. He knew he must return to Kapilavatthu where so many awaited news of his quest. He recalled, as well, King Bimbisara in the city of Rajagaha. He felt a special affinity for the young king and wished to visit him also. There were also his 5 former companions. He knew they each possessed the ability to attain liberation quickly, and he wanted to find them. No doubt they still dwelled nearby. River, sky, moon and stars, mountains, forest, every blade of grass, and every mote of dust were transformed for the Buddha. He knew that the long years he wandered in search of the way had not been wasted. Indeed, thanks to his trials and hardships, he had finally discovered the way in his own heart. Every living being possessed the heart of enlightenment. The seeds of enlightenment existed in everyone. Living beings did not need to seek enlightenment outside of themselves because all the wisdom and strength of the universe was already present in them. This was the Buddha's great discovery and was cause for all to rejoice. The children came to visit him often. The Buddha was happy to see that the way of liberation could be expressed simply and naturally. Even poor country children who had never attended school could understand his teaching. This greatly encouraged him. One day the children arrived with a basketful of tangerines. They wanted to eat the tangerines in awareness in order to practice the very first lesson the Buddha had taught them. Sujato bowed gracefully before the Buddha and then held the basket before him. He joined his palms together like a lotus bud and took a tangerine. Sujato offered the basket to Svasti, who was sitting by the Buddha's side. He too joined his palms together and took a tangerine. She offered the basket to each child until everyone had a tangerine. She sat down and placed her palms together before taking a tangerine for herself. All the children sat silently. The Buddha told them to follow their breath and smile. Then he lifted his tangerine in his left hand and looked deeply at it. The children followed his example. He slowly peeled his tangerine and the children began to peel theirs. Teacher and students enjoyed their tangerines in silent awareness. When everyone was finished eating, Bala gathered up the peels. The children had greatly enjoyed eating their tangerines mindfully with the Buddha. The Buddha took great pleasure in sharing such a practice with the children. The children visited the Buddha in the afternoons. He showed them how to sit still and to follow their breath in order to calm their minds when they felt sad or angry. He taught them walking meditation to refresh their minds and bodies. He taught them to look deeply at others and at their own actions in order to be able to see, to understand, and to love. The children understood all he taught them. Nandabala and Sujato spent an entire day sewing a new robe to offer the Buddha. It was the color of bricks, similar to the cloth of the Buddha's old robe. When Sujato learned he had to take the cemetery cloth used to cover the corpse of her former household servant, Radha, who died of typhoid fever, she wanted to weep. The Buddha was sitting beneath the Bodhi tree when the two girls arrived to offer him the robe. They waited quietly for him to emerge from his meditation. When they presented him with the new robe, he was very happy. "I have need of this robe," he said. He told them he would keep the old cloth as well, in order to have something to wear whenever he washed his new robe. Nandabala and Sujato privately resolved to sew him another robe soon. One day, Sujato's 12-year-old girlfriend, Balagupta, asked the Buddha to speak to them about friendship. Just the day before, Balagupta had had an argument with her closest friend, Jatilaka. She had not wanted to stop by Jatilaka's house on her way to see the Buddha the following day, and only did so at Sujato's insistence. Jatilaka only agreed to join them because Sujato was there. When the girls arrived at the Bodhi tree, Balagupta and Jatilaka sat far apart from one another. The Buddha told the children about the friendship shared by a deer, a bird, and a turtle. He told them that the story had taken place several thousand years before, when he was a deer in a past life. The children looked surprised, but he explained, "In previous lives, we have all been earth, stones, dew, wind, water, and fire. We have been mosses, grasses, trees, insects, fish, turtles, birds, and mammals. I have seen this most clearly in my meditations. Thus, in one life, I was a deer. This is quite an ordinary thing. I can still remember a life in which I was a jagged rock upon a mountain peak, and another life in which I was a plumeria tree. It is the same for all of you. The story I am going to tell you is about a deer, a bird, a turtle, and a hunter. Perhaps one of you was the bird and another the turtle. We have all existed in times when there were not yet any humans, or even birds and mammals on earth. There were only plants beneath the seas and trees and vegetation on the earth's surface. In those times we may have been stones, dew, or plants. Afterwards we experienced lives as birds, as all kinds of animals, and finally as human beings. Right now we are more than just human beings. We are rice plants, tangerines, rivers, and air, because without these things we could not be. When you children look at rice plants, coconuts, tangerines, and water, remember that in this life you depend upon many other beings for your existence. These other beings are part of you. If you can see that, you will experience true understanding and love. Although the story I'm about to tell you took place several thousand years ago, it could just as easily take place this very moment. Listen carefully and see whether or not you have something in common with the animals in this story. Then the Buddha began to tell his tale. At that time the Buddha was a deer who lived in a forest which had a clear lake where the deer liked to drink. A turtle lived in the lake's waters, and a magpie lived in the branches of a willow tree beside the lake. Deer, turtle, and magpie were very close friends. One day, a hunter followed day-old tracks left by deer that led to the edge of the lake. There he left a trap made of strong ropes before returning to his hut on the outskirts of the forest. Later that day, when deer came for a drink of water, he was caught by the trap. He cried out and was heard by turtle and magpie. Turtle crawled out of the water, and magpie flew down from her nest. They discussed how best to help their friend get out of his predicament. Magpie said, "Sister Turtle, your jaws are sturdy and strong. You can use them to chew and cut through these ropes. As for me, I'll find a way to prevent the hunter from coming back here." Magpie then flew off in haste. Turtle began to gnaw at the ropes. Magpie flew to the hunter's hut and perched on a mango branch outside his front door all night to wait for him. When day broke, the hunter took a sharp knife and walked out his door. As soon as she saw him, Magpie flew into his face with all her might. Struck in the face by the bird, the hunter was momentarily dazed and went back inside his hut. He lay down on the bed to rest a moment. When he got up, he paused for a moment and then, still clutching his sharp knife, went out the back door of his hut. But clever Magpie had outguessed him. She was waiting at the back, perched on a jackfruit branch. Again she flew into his face, smacking him hard. Struck in the face twice by a bird, the hunter went back into his house to think things over. He decided it was an unlucky day, and that perhaps it would be best to remain home until the morrow. The next morning he rose early. He picked up his sharp knife and, as a precaution, covered his face with a hat before he walked out the door. Seeing she could no longer attack the hunter's face, Magpie sped back to the forest to warn her friends. "The hunter is on his way." Turtle had almost chewed through the last of the ropes. But the last rope seemed as hard as steel. Her jaws were raw and bloody from chewing non-stop throughout 2 nights and a day. Still she did not stop. Just then the hunter appeared. Frightened, Deer gave a mighty kick which broke through the last rope and set him free. Deer ran into the forest. Magpie flew high into the willow tree. But Turtle was so exhausted from her efforts that she could not move. The hunter was angry to see the deer escape. He picked up the turtle and tossed her in his leather sack, which he left hanging on a branch of the willow tree. Then he went off to find Deer. Deer stood concealed behind some bushes and so saw Turtle's predicament. "My friends risked their lives for me," he thought. "Now it is time for me to do the same for them." Deer stepped out in full view of the hunter. He pretended to stumble as though very tired, and then he turned away and hobbled weakly down the path. The hunter thought, "The deer is almost out of strength. I will stalk it and soon kill it with my knife." The hunter pursued Deer deeper and deeper into the forest. Deer managed to stay just out of the hunter's reach. When they were far from the lake, Deer suddenly broke into a run until he was out of the hunter's sight. He covered his hoof prints and then returned to the lake. He used his antlers to lift the leather bag off the branch and to shake Turtle out. Magpie joined her two friends. "You both saved me from sure death today at the hunter's hand," said Deer. "I fear he will return here before long. Magpie, fly to a safer spot in the forest. Sister Turtle, crawl back into the water and hide. I will run back into the forest." When the hunter arrived back at the lake, he found his leather sack on the ground, empty. Frustrated, he picked it up and, still clutching his knife, trudged home. The children had listened to the Buddha's tale with wide-eyed interest. When the Buddha described how raw and bloody Turtle's jaws had become from chewing the ropes to save her friend, Rupak and Subosh almost cried. The Buddha asked the children, "What do you think, children?" "Long ago, I was Deer. Were any of you Turtle?" For children raised their hand, including Sujoto. The Buddha then asked, "And who among you was Magpie?" Svasti raised his hand, as did Jatilika and Balagupta. Sujoto looked at Jatilika and then at Balagupta. "If you were both Magpie, that makes you one person. What good is it for Magpie to be mad at Magpie? Can't our friendship equal that of Magpie, Turtle, and Deer?" Balagupta stood up and walked over to Jatilika. She took her friend's hand in her own two hands. Jatilika pulled Balagupta into her arms and then slid over to make a place for Balagupta to sit. The Buddha smiled. "You children understand the story well. Remember that tales like the one I have just recounted are taking place all the time right in our own daily lives." Chapter 21. The Lotus Pond. After the children returned home, the Buddha did walking meditation. He lifted his robe to wade across the river and then followed a path between two rice fields that led to a lotus pond he liked very much. There he sat down and contemplated the beautiful lotuses. As he looked at the lotus stems, leaves, and flowers, he thought of all the different stages of a lotus growth. The roots remained buried in mud. Some stems had not risen above the surface of the water, while others had barely emerged to reveal leaves still curled tightly shut. There were unopened lotus flower buds, those with petals just beginning to peek out, and lotus flowers in full bloom. There were seed pods from which all the petals had fallen. There were white lotus flowers, blue ones, and pink ones. The Buddha reflected that people were not very different from lotus flowers. Each person had his or her own natural disposition. Devadatta was not like Ananda, Yasodhara was not the same as Queen Pamita, Sujata was not like Bala. Personality, virtue, intelligence, and talent varied widely among people. The path of liberation which the Buddha had discovered needed to be expounded in many ways to suit many kinds of people. Teaching the village children was so pleasant, he thought, because he could speak to them in such a simple way. Different teaching methods were like gates by which different kinds of people could enter and understand the teaching. The creation of Dharma gates would result from direct encounters with people. There were no ready-made methods miraculously received under the Bodhi tree. The Buddha saw that it would be necessary to return to society in order to set the wheel of Dharma in motion and to sow the seeds of liberation. 49 days had passed since his awakening. It was now time to depart from Uruvela. He decided to leave the following morning, parting from the cool forest by the banks of the Niranjara river, the Bodhi tree, and the children. He wanted first to seek out his two teachers, Alara Kalama and Adaka Ramaputta. He was confident that they would attain awakening in no time at all. After assisting these two venerable men, he would find the 5 friends who had practiced austerities with him. Then he would return to Magadha to see King Bimbisara. The next morning, the Buddha put on his new robe and walked into Uruvela while the morning air was still misty. He went to Svasti's hut and told the young buffalo boy and his family that the time had come for him to depart. The Buddha patted each of the children gently on the head, and together they walked to Sujata's house. Sujata cried when she learned the news. The Buddha said, "I must leave in order to fulfill my responsibilities. But I promise that I will return to visit you whenever I have a chance. You children have helped me greatly, and I am grateful. Please remember and practice the things I have shared with you. That way I will never be far from you. Sujata, dry your tears now and give me a smile." Sujata wiped her tears with the edge of her sari and tried to smile. Then the children walked with the Buddha to the edge of the village. The Buddha was turning to say farewell when he noticed a young ascetic walking towards them. The ascetic joined his palms in greeting and looked curiously at the Buddha. After a long moment, he said, "Monk, you look most radiant and peaceful. What is your name and who is your master?" The Buddha answered, "My name is Siddhartha Gautama. I have studied with many teachers, but no one is my teacher now. What is your name, and where are you coming from?" The ascetic answered, "My name is Upaka. I have just left the center of Master Adaka Ramaputta. Is Master Udaka in good health?" "Master Udaka died just a few days ago." The Buddha sighed. He would not have a chance to help his old teacher after all. He asked, "Have you ever studied with Master Alara Kalama?" Upaka answered, "Yes. But he, too, has recently died. Do you by any chance know of a monk named Kondana?" Upaka said, "Yes, indeed. I heard about Kondana and 4 other monks when I was living at Master Adaka's center. I heard they are living and practicing together at the deer park in Isipatana, near the city of Varanasi. Gautama, if you will excuse me, I will continue on my way. I have a long day's journey ahead. The Buddha joined his palms to Bidupaka farewell, and then he turned to the children. Children, I will follow the road to Varanasi to find my 5 friends. The sun has risen. Please return home now. The Buddha joined his palms in farewell. Then he followed the river northwards. He knew it would be a longer route but easier to travel. The Narangara River led northwards to where it emptied into the Ganga. If he followed the westward course of the Ganga, he would reach the village of Pataligrama within a few days. There he could cross to the other side of the Ganga and reach Varanasi, the capital of Kosi. The children gazed at him until he was out of sight. They were filled with terrible sadness and longing. Sujato cried, and Svasti felt like crying too, but he did not want to cry in front of his brother and sisters. After a long moment, he said, "Sister Sujato, I need to get ready to tend the buffaloes. We should all head home. Bala, remember to give Rupak a bath today. Here, I'll carry Bhima." They followed the riverbank back towards the village. No one spoke another word. The elder Ananda was gentle and friendly, as well as unusually handsome. And he did indeed possess an uncanny memory. He remembered every detail of every discourse the Buddha gave. He repeated the 11 points the Buddha had elaborated in the sutra on tending water buffaloes, to Svasti and Rahula's gratitude. Svasti realized that Ananda would remember everything Svasti had just recounted about the Buddha's time in the forest near Uruvela. While Svasti recounted his story, he glanced often at Bhikkhuni Gautami. Her sparkling eyes told him how much she enjoyed listening to all he was saying. He made a special effort to include as many details as he could remember. Bhikkhuni Gautami especially enjoyed hearing about all the children in Uruvela, like the time they ate tangerines mindfully with the Buddha in the forest. It was easy to see how much Rahula enjoyed hearing what Svasti had to say. Although the elder Assaji had not made any comments during the 2 days Svasti told his story, it was clear he was enjoying it also. Svasti knew that Assaji was one of the 5 friends who had practiced self-mortification with the Buddha. Svasti was most curious to know what happened when the Buddha met them after 6 months of separation, but he was too shy to ask. As if she could read his thoughts, Bhikkhuni Gautami said, "Svasti, would you like to hear the elder Assaji tell us what happened after the Buddha left Uruvela?" Assaji has been with the Buddha for 10 years now, but I don't think he has ever spoken about what happened in the deer park at Isipatana. Master Assaji, would you consent to tell us about the Buddha's first Dharma talk and some of what has taken place in the past 10 years? Assaji joined his palms and responded, "No need to call me Master, Bhikkhuni Gautami. Today we have already heard a great deal from Bhikkhu Starsti, and it is almost time for meditation. Why don't you all come to my hut tomorrow, and I will tell you all that I remember. Chapter 22. Turning the Wheel of Dharma. Assaji was practicing the austere way in the deer park. One day after his sitting meditation, he noticed a monk approaching from off in the distance. As the stranger came closer, he realized it was none other than Siddhartha, and he quickly told his four friends. Buddha said, Siddhartha abandoned the path halfway. He ate rice, drank milk, and visited with the village children. He really let us down. I say we shouldn't even greet him. So the 5 friends agreed not to meet Siddhartha by the gate to the park. They also decided not to stand and greet him if he should enter the deer park by himself. But what actually took place was entirely different. When Siddhartha entered the gate, the 5 ascetic companions were so impressed by his radiant bearing that they all stood up at once. Siddhartha seemed to be surrounded by an aura of light. Each step he took revealed a rare spiritual strength. His penetrating gaze undermined their intention to snub him. Kondana ran up to him and took his begging bowl. Mahanama fetched water so that Siddhartha could wash his hands and feet. Buddha pulled up a stool for him to sit on. Vapa found a fan of palm leaves and began to fan him. Assaji stood to one side, not knowing what to do. After Siddhartha washed his hands and feet, Assaji realized he could fill a bowl with cool water and offer it to him. The 5 friends sat in a circle around Siddhartha, who looked kindly at them and said, My brothers, I have found the way, and I will show it to you. Assaji half believed and half doubted Siddhartha's words. Perhaps the others felt the same, for no one spoke for a long moment. Then Kondana blurted out, Gautama, you abandoned the path halfway. You ate rice, drank milk, and spent time with the village children. How can you have found the path to liberation? Siddhartha looked into Kondana's eyes and asked, Friend Kondana, you have known me a long time. During all that time, have I ever lied to you? Kondana admitted that he had not. Indeed, Siddhartha, I have never heard you speak anything but the truth. The Buddha said, Then please listen, my friends. I have found the great way, and I will show it to you. You will be the first to hear my teaching. This Dharma is not the result of thinking. It is the fruit of direct experience. Listen serenely with all your awareness. The Buddha's voice was filled with such spiritual authority that his 5 friends joined their palms and looked up at him. Kondana spoke for them all. Please, friend Gautama, show us compassion and teach us the way. The Buddha began serenely, My brothers, there are 2 extremes that a person on the path should avoid. One is to plunge oneself into sensual pleasures, and the other is to practice austerities which deprive the body of its needs. Both of these extremes lead to failure. The path I have discovered is the middle way, which avoids both extremes and has the capacity to lead one to understanding, liberation, and peace. It is the Noble Eightfold Path of right understanding, right thought, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. I have followed this Noble Eightfold Path and have realized understanding, liberation, and peace. Brothers, why do I call this path the right path? I call it the right path because it does not avoid or deny suffering, but allows for a direct confrontation with suffering as the means to overcome it. The Noble Eightfold Path is the path of living in awareness. Mindfulness is the foundation. By practicing mindfulness, you can develop concentration which enables you to attain understanding. Thanks to right concentration, you realize right awareness, thoughts, speech, action, livelihood, and effort. The understanding which develops can liberate you from every shackle of suffering and give birth to true peace and joy. Brothers, there are 4 truths: the existence of suffering, the cause of suffering, the cessation of suffering, and the path which leads to the cessation of suffering. I call these the 4 noble truths. The first is the existence of suffering. Birth, old age, sickness, and death are suffering. Sadness, anger, jealousy, worry, anxiety, fear, and despair are suffering. Separation from loved ones is suffering. Association with those you hate is suffering. Desire, attachment, and clinging to the 5 aggregates are suffering. Brothers, the second truth is the cause of suffering. Because of ignorance, people cannot see the truth about life, and they become caught in the flames of desire, anger, jealousy, grief, worry, fear, and despair. Brothers, the third truth is the cessation of suffering. Understanding the truth of life brings about the cessation of every grief and sorrow and gives rise to peace and joy. Brothers, the fourth truth is the path which leads to the cessation of suffering. It is the Noble Eightfold Path, which I have just explained. The Noble Eightfold Path is nourished by living mindfully. Mindfulness leads to concentration and understanding, which liberates you from every pain and sorrow and leads to peace and joy. I will guide you along this path of realization. While Siddhartha was explaining the 4 noble truths, Kondana suddenly felt a great light shining within his own heart. He could taste the liberation he had sought for so long. His face beamed with joy. The Buddha pointed at him and cried, "Kondana! You've got it! You've got it!" Kondana joined his palms and bowed before the Buddha. With deepest respect, he spoke, "Venerable Gautama, please accept me as your disciple. I know that under your guidance, I will attain the Great Awakening." The other 4 monks also bowed at the Buddha's feet, joined their palms, and asked to be received as disciples. The Buddha motioned his friends to rise. After they took their places again, he said, "Brothers, the children of Uruvela village gave me the name the Buddha. You, too, may call me by that name if you like." Kondana asked, "Doesn't Buddha mean one who is awakened?" "That is correct. And they call the path I have discovered the way of awakening. What do you think of this name?" "One who is awakened. The way of awakening. Wonderful! Wonderful! These names are true, yet simple. We will happily call you the Buddha and the path you have discovered the way of awakening. As you just said, living each day mindfully is the very basis of spiritual practice." The 5 monks were of one mind to accept Gautama as their teacher and to call him the Buddha. The Buddha smiled at them. "Please, brothers, practice with an open and intelligent spirit, and in 3 months you will have attained the fruit of liberation." The Buddha stayed in Isipatana to guide his 5 friends. Following his teaching, they gave up their practice of austerities. Every day 3 monks went begging for food and returned to share the offerings with the other 3. The Buddha gave them individual attention, enabling each monk to make rapid progress. The Buddha taught them about the impermanent and non-self nature of all things. He taught them to look at the 5 aggregates as 5 constantly flowing rivers, which contained nothing that could be called separate or permanent. The 5 aggregates were the body, feelings, perceptions, mental formations, and consciousness. By meditating on the 5 aggregates within themselves, they came to see the intimate and wondrous connection between themselves and all in the universe. Thanks to their diligence, they all realized the way. The first to attain awakening was Kondana, followed 2 months later by Vapa and Buddha. Shortly afterwards, Mahanama and Asaji also attained arhatship. In great joy, the Buddha told them, "Now we have a real community, which we will call our Sangha." The Sangha is the community of those who live in harmony and awareness. We must take the seeds of awakening and sow them in all places.